Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast where I bring in the best and the brightest in the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. My guest today is David Graziano, the founder of Art With Me. He is an artist, creative visionary, and hospitality pioneer who approaches every project with heart and incredible attention to detail. At the age of 19, David's passion for sculpture started his entrepreneurial career as a furniture designer, making sculpture furniture out of stone and wood, and he spent the next 5 years designing and building furniture for clients like Shaq, Ken Griffey Jr., and the PGA offices. And in the early 1990s, he quickly set his sights on New York City, the nightlife capital, and started Sky Studios, a club design firm that had a laundry list of clients in the top nightlife capital. While David's venues defined the generation of New York City nightlife, he was turning the page on a new chapter of his life in Mexico. David had visited Tulum for the first time in the early 2000s and discovered an intense connection to the land. Heavily influenced by his experience at Burning Man, particularly the principles, including the judgment-free ethos of burners, he set out to design Tulum Hotel that gave everyone from luxury seekers to low-budget backpackers a home in Tulum. The concept worked, and the result is Ahau, one of the Tulum's most talked-about hotels where good vibes flow freely through the winding jungle pathways. The Ahau mentality is nature is the new luxury, and David's commitment to environmentally conscious living is reflected at every turn. The Ahau Group quickly grew to include more hotels. Each property is a reflection of David's passions for the community and his unique creative eye. They're the only properties in Tulum that have achieved Green Key International certification status. And in 2017, David began uniting Tulum hotels and the local community to launch Art With Me, Tulum's first arts and culture festival. From its inaugural year, Art With Me has brought together over 30 local businesses for a common goal: to bring awareness to the region's environmental issues and to find solutions so we can develop business practices that are more harmonious with its natural environment. And it's David's hope that Art With Me will become a reference point for tourism and lifestyle in Tulum, where people don't just travel to Tulum for vacation, but also to play an active role in protecting it now and for future generations. And 2 years ago, David brought Art With Me to Miami, an international arts, music, and culture festival offering experiences across a multitude of highly creative platforms that is immerse, inspires, and activates its attendees and followers. And I'm excited to check it out for the first time this year. So let's pull back the curtain and get a behind-the-scenes look at the mission behind Art With Me with its founder, David Graziano. David, I'm thrilled to have you. Thank you for bearing with the technical, getting everything together, and welcome to the show, man.
Well, thank you very much, Adam. Pleasure meeting you here. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Good stuff. So the key piece that really stood out to me almost immediately when I was doing our background research, is you and my father have something very important in common. Two things. You both went to Pratt, right? And
Yep.
My dad is a wood sculptor and a stone sculptor who did furniture pieces.
Cool. Very
just
cool.
like yourself.
Very
and
cool.
when I read that, I'm like, shit. I'm like, this conversation was meant to be, because I don't think I've ever met somebody who went to Pratt and did furniture.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He did his style. Well, he studied proper stone sculpture in Italy for a year, for a semester, for 2 semesters. But before that, his medium was butcher block wood. So he would compress the wood together with these giant clamps, these vices, and then chisel the shit out of it.
Yeah.
So all of his furniture pieces are like human male arms like this, like carved out like bar stools and swings. And he has all these old photographs from like the late 70s, right before I was born. And he's got this big giant afro.
Did
and he's got
he
these
study
overalls.
industrial design?
I don't know exactly all the coursework that he studied, but I'm sure it was everything. And then he went on to teach New York City Board of Ed art for 30 years. So that
Amazing.
was
Amazing.
that was his journey. So I ask you, where did that creative juices come from? Were you always creative as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, my both my parents were really creative. My father also was a master carpenter, furniture builder, and my mother, and she works in the medical field, but she's an incredible interior designer and really artistic. And there's some lineage of artists in our family, from music to sculpting to painting. So probably had some of the pre-wiring from the DNA component.
Did you always feel that you were destined to go down that path? Was it natural? Were there
No,
any other
no,
inklings of like, hey, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a businessman?
no. I was groomed to be a baseball player. Actually, I had my baseball coach when I was in Little League told my mom that if I wanted to pursue this sport, he thought that if I stuck to it and worked hard, that I could go all the way. So it was baseball, 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 baseball camp, baseball, everything. And it wasn't until ninth grade that I took an art class with an art teacher, like an AP art class, where the art teacher had called my mom and had a conversation with her, saying that she thought that I was one of the most versatile art students she had ever seen, and that I should pursue a career in art. So then my mom, she was a very scholastic person, so she really, took to any time a school would recommend something. So it was that push that really like started making, well, maybe I'll look at what I can do with my art.
And where did you start? Was it sketches, just
I
drawing,
was doing sketches. I found a
doodles?
photo when I was 6 years old of me standing next to a Lincoln log structure that I had built that was basically 6 feet tall
Wow,
with cantilevered bedrooms and like giant, yeah, it was architect. And later in life, I was like, Mom, look at this structure. I'm 6 years
at
old. I'm
6.
standing next to this thing. Did this wasn't a sign a little bit that maybe I'd have something to do with building? But I did do a lot of drawing and entered into a lot of drawing classes when I was younger. But it wasn't until that teacher that really nudged my mom that it
Someone
was
to
like
believe
a
in you.
more serious career path, right? Yeah.
I love it. It's so crazy too. Lincoln Logs. For anyone out there who doesn't understand what Lincoln Logs are, now they're plastic because my 4-year-old son has Lincoln Logs. We got them for him. But back when we had them, David, do you prefer David?
Dave, it's fine.
They were wood. They were logs. They were literally
There
Lincoln
would.
Logs. And for you to
You
create
would.
something 6 feet tall with cantilever hanging over,
Yeah.
that's a modern marvel at that age.
I had like 5 sets too. I had so many pieces. You can still buy them in wood. You just got to look. You got to hunt for them.
My vice is and still is today's Legos. If I tilted the camera around here, you can see on the top I have all my adult Lego sets up there that I build.
Yeah,
That's the
beautiful.
first time I've shown it
Yeah.
on camera on the podcast. Look at
Oh,
that.
nice,
Um,
nice.
so that's my fix there. So fast forward 19, you're making furniture sculptures for some pretty famous folks in New York and around the world. How'd you get your art noticed?
No, actually, I was in Orlando, where I started a custom furniture design business in my late teens, early 20s, and I did a trade show, furniture trade show where I had a booth, runner up in to best in show. I lost to Disney. Um,
Hmm.
but that show, what happened was is I got exposed to a couple of key interior designers for celebrities, and after that, I got asked to do. I did some furniture for like Ken Griffey Jr.'s house, and then I did the conference table for the PGA headquarters in Daytona, and I just started getting my furniture into a couple of the right interior designers, and that got me some great clients, and that was kind of the starting point for me getting my artwork out there.
So let's think about those early days, and then I definitely want to get into the New York City club era of the late '90s and early 2000s there. But during those times when you were starting out and really your first business, your furniture business, what was one of those early lessons that you learned when you look back on it today? And we'll get to Art With Me and all the success and what you built out in Tulum. One of those early lessons that was really a foundation for your current success.
You know, I'm sure it's different for a lot of people, but for me, what was I worked really well when I wasn't being told what I wanted to do, and the motivation of when you do something willingly, right? Being rather than, hey, you need to do this, and I'm going to go do this because you asked me to do it or you told me to do it. It's different when I realize that, I'm doing something with my own will. Like I'm really willing. And when when you're willing to do something, I think it really brings the best out of you. And so early on, I think it was just realizing that, hey, I'm doing this for myself, and I got to prove to myself, not because, I've been asked to do this or my parents asked me to do this. It was the first time I realized that, no, this is something I really want to do for me, and I got to prove to myself I can do this.
So a combination of following your passion and really following your heart and doing what you wanted to do really laid the groundwork there. So hitting the rewind button for a second, I want to go back to that time in New York City nightlife. Were you drawn to that scene? What was it? Was it the music, the vibe, or was it work?
I'll put it into context. It actually happened before New York, but you need this component for the New York component. It's basically, I had an art gallery at 24 years old. All my furniture was in it in the front. And then I had a back part of the gallery, which I would like to help promote other artists. I saw the struggling artist that had so much talent, but was struggling on the business side of things. And I was lucky enough to have got a decent balance, enough to where I could take my art and have enough of a business sense to get it out there and make it marketable. So I used to do these art openings, and I had a huge art opening, and two guys came into the art opening that ran the NightLife in Orlando. And they looked at the clientele inside the gallery, and they're like, where did all these people come from? These are beautiful people. We'd love to have these people in our nightclub. And I was like, they're like, how can we get these people in our nightclub? And I was like, well, I knew who they were. I was like, well, you can build a nightclub with me and I'll bring these people. And it was through design, really. So I designed my first nightclub in Orlando, and I became a partner with them. It was called Blue Room. So by the time I got to New York in my late 20s, I had already owned the most successful nightclub during that time in Orlando and designed and built it. So it was a logical place for me, to get involved, as I already had done it in Orlando.
I see these early components coming together, being a connector, being an artist, having the business acumen, and being in the music space. That's all kind of leading to us today. But I want to get to your first time going to Mexico. Do you remember your first trip to Mexico? And specifically the Tulum region?
Yes, I do. Very clear. Very, very clear.
And what was that for that first experience?
I had been to Mexico once or twice earlier on like a senior cruise in high school where we just stopped in Cancun. But we were in Las Vegas for Memorial Day weekend with a friend of mine. And he was like, I got to go look at this piece of land in Tulum. Let's go. And I was like, Harlan, I'm not getting on a plane and leaving Las Vegas Memorial Day weekend to go to some town never heard of in Mexico. I'm sorry, not interested. Anyways, I also had liked a girl that was at a beauty pageant there, and he managed to go behind and speak to the girls and say, well, listen, I got the girls coming on this trip. Would you like to go on this trip? And I had an interest in this one beautiful woman. So he got me to go and to look at a piece of land, and we went to Tulum, and I remember climbing over some rocks to get to the beach because you couldn't get to the beach, and landing my feet in that sand, and had never really felt sand like that before. And I just looked at him and I said, Harlan, if you don't buy this beach, you're crazy. And that was my first taste. And every year after that, every time I had a girlfriend that I really liked, I would bring her to this one spot that I thought was just paradise.
So let's talk about Tulum and the evolution of Tulum in, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the early 2000s and where it was from how much of it was built out, the infrastructure, the tourism industry, how open the locals were to having the tourism in there. And what were those early challenges of developing?
Well, the challenges were great, but the experience was always so wonderful that I was prepared to pretty much ride through any challenge that crossed my path. But, it was a very what I loved about it was the simplicity. And so being there gave you a sense of just, there weren't a lot of rules. There's not a lot of structure there. He's like, So you'd be able to go down there and feel very free. And I think that's what I was attracted to, is that sense of freedom where it's just like, I know that I'm only an hour and a half away from an international airport and I can get, but I feel so removed from the rest of the modern day society that I could be anywhere in the world right now. I could be in Fiji or Indonesia, but I'm actually just an hour and away from a major international airport. And it was something accessible. I found really interesting. Yeah.
And how much of the ethos of Burning Man, particularly the judgment free and the freedom and also the democratization of being like, you could be with, billionaire founders and then, low budget backpack, putting it all together.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important topic you just touched on, because I felt the same energy on that playa as I did on the playa at Burning Man. And what I meant, but it was just, you had this magic of beauty where nature was just so captivating. So, that was the first thing that takes you in, it's like you go to Burning Man, you see these sunrises or these sunsets, and the nature in itself before a festival even happens there is so magnetic that you want to go there anyways, right? So I felt Tulum had this magic, and it was so, the nature itself was so inspiring that I was like, wow, if I build something here, then people are going to flip out. This has that magnetic magic, and it's one of nature's, beautiful spots in the world. The energy felt very similar to Burning
Man. How do you balance keeping that ethos and mentality, David, with the business aspect? You need to build a property. You need to have elements of luxury to attract people there, but also keep it, accessible to a point. How much of a challenge was that?
I would say that at that point, what I was focusing on was what the new luxury was, and that's nature. I mean, nature's the new luxury, right? So, I didn't want to. We were going to build something that was luxury, but not the way that old people knew of luxury, right? And so the designing spaces where we integrated the nature into the rooms, all the materials and elements that we built these hotels with came within the region, and we really focused on how to harmonize the design with the nature, so that in the end, the architectural and design component was less of what the focus was, and more of the emphasis on how do we let people enjoy the nature. And
that's what it is, right? The aha mentality is, as you said, nature is the new luxury, and especially your commitment to environmental conscious living, and how that's reflected at every single turn through the properties, and getting that Green Key International certification status. For anybody out there who's not familiar, how important is it, and how difficult is it to get that status?
Oh, I mean, Green Key, it's kind of like LEED certification for architecture. It's right. a category. It's a category in hospitality that really shows that your business is taking a certain amount of environmental responsibility in order to to be awarded that. I think for me, it just comes from just being grateful, because the nature gives us so much, and it's so beautiful that there's got to be a way, or a better way, to continuously work in harmony with it, so that you can accomplish your goals as a businessman while being really grateful and appreciative and respectful to the environment that's helping you do that.
I mean, shouldn't that just be the way, right? I mean, between you and I, it seems so simple, and I think just greed gets in the way.
And lack of awareness. I think it's lack of awareness and
true.
Lack of appreciation.
Hey everybody, first I'd like to thank you all for spending time with me and my guest on the podcast. This show is my canvas to showcase amazing people from the world of recruiting, entrepreneurship, and leadership, and unpack their career journeys for everyone to learn from. But this show is also a business generator for me, as well as creating thought leadership and endless amazing content. And I've taken what I've learned in the past 3 years and over 200 recorded and 100 live shows and distilled it down into a digital playbook that I call the Pause Course. Now you could learn how I build, manage, and produce the podcast and use it to drive real business development and relationships. Today, I'm sharing all of my secrets behind the podcast, and you can get it all at thepausecourse.com. This course is for anyone, whether you're starting out or an advanced podcaster, you're using it for B2B and B2C. It's filled with all of my insights, learnings, tips, tricks, and templates. So get it now at thepozcourse.com and learn all my secrets. Thanks.
So let's get into the Art With Me origin story. Correct me if I'm wrong. In 2017, you began uniting the Tulum hotels and the community. Was it like an idea that's been building within you, putting all the pieces together of your life up until this point, the culmination of creativity, music, community? How did it all start, man?
Art with me is everything that I'm passionate about and good at wrapped in one. It's like my, if I was, I want to leave a legacy in the history of imagination. This is where this is where my attempt is going to go. It was a combination of where I was in my life as an adult and the different developmental stages you go through as an adult. I was leaving the stage of like I want to build a family. I already had gone through like the physical part of my life where I'm an athlete. I wanted to it was a lot of external, and then there was this element where I need to build a career. I proved myself to myself, and then I went and I got to start a family, and there was this family part of my development, right? And then once I got through those three stages, I got into this area of like, how can I be more in service? How can I give back, right? And I've been with all the gifts that I've been blessed with. So I wanted to use creativity and imagination as the key lens, to achieve some of the goals, which was, how do we, in Tulum, originally the idea wasn't a universal or a global brand concept. It was like, okay, we got issues in Tulum. It's growing really fast. There's environmental challenges. If I'm going to be here with my businesses, I got to say first, thank you to Tulum and thank you to Mexico for all the wonderful, beautiful things that it's helped. And then all these other hotels, we've just been taking and taking and taking from Tulum because so we need to come together and we got to figure out a way to give back. And so I would like to use art as the lens to showcase these things because art's inspiring. And when people are inspired, they're more in a receiving mode. So
absolutely,
it's like when you crack somebody open and you're going to share information with them, the moments that are best are during moments of inspiration. It's where it resonates deeper. And I noticed that with my own retreats when I was doing that in Tulum. The difference from day one when they first arrive to day 2 or 3 once they've been really inspired by the nature, right? So Art With Me's principal goal was how do we tap into that energy, right? When somebody is cracked open through inspiration. And so can we create inspirational moments and habitats and a platform where these moments are more likely to happen. And then we can get into sharing really important topics and discussing things that are imminent in today's world.
Essentially, you're creating a canvas for self-discovery.
Absolutely. Self-discovery, it's growth, the growth component is there. It's deeper connections, human connections with people. I mean, the happiest people I know are the people that have the healthiest and strongest relationships with their friends, their loved ones, and their coworkers, right?
Amen.
And so I think we are a social species. And, being a social species, we thrive off social interaction. So if I could participate in creating spaces or platforms where people have the opportunity to have deeper human connection through celebration and inspiration, this is the space I want to be in.
What was one of those early challenges from a business perspective, putting together I don't know if the original vision was a festival rather than a gathering, which your original thought process was, but it morphed into a festival. What were some of those early challenges?
Well, doing anything in Mexico is a challenge in sense of getting it done.
Government, politics, police.
Yeah, there's logistical challenges. There's obviously, I had, luckily because of the hotels, I had a good baseline platform to start from.
You had headquarters.
I had headquarters, but I had things like, for example, we had brought in one of Mexico's biggest bands called Bronco, which they're huge. And we basically were going to take $250,000 and donate it to the city by throwing a free concert in the city. We did not want Art With Me to be a tourist event only. We wanted it to be an event that was good for the city. So 30% of our programming was free. And so we had a free concert in the municipality, the town, for all the locals. And we drove up and down the street the week before with megaphones on a car and said that we had Bronco coming to Tulum and it was free. And the way that you got your ticket was to bring a minimum of 15 recycled bottles to our recycle stations. And so we collected 4,000 pounds of plastic. 7,000 people lined up over the week with bags of plastic. We threw this concert. So the city was giving us this kind of fairgrounds area where they have near the municipality, and they were going to give it to us for free and supply the ambulances and police. 4 days before the event, or 3 days before the event, my production guy goes down there, calls me up freaking out saying, David, you're not going to believe this. There's a carnival on this property right now. There's a fair
right
going
now.
on.
Right now.
It's like, we're supposed to be setting up a stage and you have a full-fledged carnival going on in this field. So that was a unique challenge. The city double booked. They didn't ever pay attention to who was already previously booked there. And the carnival operators did not want to move. And we had a 10,000 person concert that it was going to happen in 3 days.
It's a stalemate.
So I won't get into the details, but
it's literally a Mexican standoff. It's a Mexican standoff. Yeah. And it was resolved one way or another.
We resolved it. It was amazing. 10,000 people showed up to this concert. All the government officials were there. It lit up Tulum. It was really beautiful.
So after the dust settles, after that first festival, how soon was it immediate? Where you're like, shit, we got to keep this going. We got to take it to the next level. We got to do this again next year. We got to keep it going. We got to create more. We have so many ideas and learnings.
Well, I had a couple of friends come up to me after the event. That first event, I think only 450 people. I basically personally went out and invited, a bunch of friends. And, well, I'd say 5 or 6 key people in my life came up to me afterwards independently. Not, it was like, oh my God, what you just did is incredible. You got to expand on this idea. They're like, this is going to be much bigger than anything you've done before in your life if you go down this path. And they were inspiring me by their excitement and what they saw and how much the event inspired them. And then, I thought to myself, it was the first time where I was really working on something that was bigger than my own stuff, and I think that was inspirational, where it was connected to something bigger than my own business. And that was the component where the charity component, and the aspect of how can we give back too by still having fun? We could do all this with an intention
and still have a good time.
Yeah. So when we sat down and we saw how these pillars started to really work, where it was the component of with me. I tried to trademark with me, but that wasn't possible. But I love the idea of the with me component. It's like all of a sudden you had eat with me and you had play with me and you had dance with me and breathe with me. And we saw these pillars, right? And we're like, wow, each one of these pillars are their own world. Eat with me is going to be a food and wine event or a NightLife pop-up or a weekend food and wine festival. Breathe with me is a wellness event. Dance with me is a one-night pop-up or it's a weekend music festival. And then all of a sudden, and then we have our care with me, our foundation. All these pillars are really their own thing, and they all can come together maybe 3 or 4 times a year for the full programming. We really loved that idea, how we can expand and reach out with the concept and the brand without always having to produce a large-scale festival. And
that's the key.
It was inspiring to realize that we had this great kind of idea to really market well.
And it all comes together. I've taken a look at the lineups over the last couple of years from the artists, the musical artists, the physical artists, the installations, the health and wellness that you're referencing, and it's incredible to see all these really eclectic group of creators coming together under one space, and the curation of that too. Talk to us a little bit about the curation. What goes into bringing the right people, the right groups, the right organizations together, and how difficult is that? Or does it happen organically because you're attracting and these are the people in your ethos in your circles?
Well, a little
bit of both.
Ideally, I'd like it to be a combination. And I think the future of the events portion of Art With Me, because Art With Me is not just an events our festival. It has a sculpture park aspect, which I'd like to share with you later. It has an agency component where we want to help the artists get their exposure and sell their art. But I think, for me, the event's about being well balanced. And it's the idea of the pillars are to have, a better understanding of what is a balanced lifestyle through, the acts of celebration and fun. And, I think what happened is we just really tried to make it eclectic in a way that we first trying to make it so that we weren't just one genre. We weren't just going to be like, oh, we're going to be this type of music. We're going to have, I have everything from folk singing, singer-songwriter to electronic to reggae. And
Everything in
we want
between.
to, if our age demographic is from 2 to 80, then, our music and our art and everything else has to, reach, a very diverse group of people. This is a challenge. It's a benefit, and it's also a challenge. How do you tell your story if you're spread so wide? So we've been working on that, but I think the future of it wants to be a combination of the Art With Me's creative team sitting down and helping to select and produce this experience, and then having a whole section that's more like Burning Man that allows participants and the ticket holders to come in and combine their own addition by putting their creativity and their ideas into place. So the future, what we're looking to do is to create on a large scale festival is you'd have 2 main districts. You'd have a district that was a festival being produced, and you'd have a whole district that was a component where the camping aspect would be, made up of, camps that were also adding their content and creating their own stuff. And you have both worlds kind of working together.
I love the collaboration. I mean, that is a consistent theme here: creativity and collaboration. So, what was the impetus to take the concept to Miami, and why Miami?
I grew up in South Florida, so I probably have some connection to that region just based on that's where my childhood was. But I also thought from the company's perspective on the brand, there's 3 types of events on the festival side. We have a micro event, we have a mid-size event, and we have a large festival. Miami, I thought, was a great destination to do a mid-size event, about 15,000 people, that would be really good for the brand awareness. So Tulum and Miami's were really, the idea was these 2 locations are very international. They draw a lot of international attention. There's a lot of creativity going on in both those destinations. There's a lot of press that circles around it, a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought from a strategic point that was a good move for the brand. Second, we love the destination, the weather, the beach. It also felt, similar to where it was the Art With Me was born. And it's a great location. It's a hub. So, getting artists and materials and things was very accessible. And so overall, we thought our next step was to do Art With Me in an area that would, have the right environment, the weather, hopefully it doesn't rain this year, but it's generally sunny. But it's just that beach vibe that we started on. So it was kind of close to our roots in terms of the environment.
And it also, I mean, tell me if this has anything to do with it. On the calendar, it aligns. It's right before Art Basel. There's a lot of creative folks in town. And logistically, it's like, hey, I mean, even from myself coming, it's like, hey, you're already going to be coming into town. Bump the calendar up a few days.
So once we decided Miami, it's a very important point. Once we decided Miami and we started honing on what date would be best, right? We realized that weekend would allow artists to be able to leave their art during the Art Basel, which was to us, we're at heart an art festival, right? So if artists are have the opportunity to leave their art or have their art present during this incredible major international event, one of the biggest in the world, that this is a good move for the main component, which is the art component. We had a lot of people tell us it was a terrible weekend. It's just a Thanksgiving.
It's true.
Some people, are against, going up against a giant, but I don't look at things like that. I don't look at it like we're slicing up a pie with more slices. I look at it like, well, we're just going to make another pie, you know, and
Abundance,
yeah.
David.
So there's enough for all, and I thought that ultimately the smart strategy was what can we do that's best for the artist.
And that's a tremendous approach there. So
I'd
what's
like to
a
say
couple
one other thing.
secret?
I might
Sure,
take
go
us a
for it.
little longer than it might take us an extra year or two because it is a challenging time of the year. So we knew that this date might mean that maybe it takes an extra year or two to get the thing really rolling. But we were prepared to do that because we knew that that was the right weekend for the event and the people participating in it.
Well, hopefully that's the right strategy, and I think it's going to work out just fine for you guys. What's a philanthropic? What's a give back element to the city and people of Miami?
So we're focusing the Care With Me component. It's very moldable. Usually, we would go into cities, and if we were working with the government, we'd ask them, well, what areas do you want us to focus on? How can we, bring something to light that is important to you, the citizens of Miami? That's one question we usually ask, but really where we've gone is we've just realized that we really want to focus on how to bring more creativity, more art, more imagination to kids, especially underprivileged kids that would not normally have the ability to experience this type of art or interact with it or even be in the presence of it. So, like last year, we brought in a bunch of schools and kids, and we created this whole like daytime experience for the kids where it's free. Kids are free under 12 years old. So we really have a day programming set up where there's, art and wellness stuff for the kids. And so this year, we're we're out to build these backpacks where we'll donate it to underprivileged kids that have a backpack, but it's full of art supplies. And it's got like the
Love
drawing
it.
pads and color pencils and stuff like that. And so I think we're really going to, even though the environmental aspect is we like to create awareness campaigns. We're going to bring attention to different environmental initiatives, but we're really focusing on how do we bring more art, creativity, and imagination to underprivileged kids.
Inspiring the youth, and that brings me to the question as we bring it home here, David. When I say the word legacy, when your time comes to leave the earth, how do you want to be remembered?
I've always just envisioned that as my life goal. And it's basically when my friends and family and loved ones or people that know of me are reflecting on my death or standing at my gravesite, that feeling that I want to leave them with, that feeling is what's my life goal. And there's a sense of feeling you have when someone passes, and I think for me, it was like, if I could inspire somebody in their lifetime to be a better person, to be more creative, to dig deeper into who they are, if I had any involvement at all in that part of someone's life, that would be probably the greatest gift I could give.
It's massive. And you've had such an interesting, eclectic, fascinating, privilege in a positive way life, and you've experienced so much. David, what's the single greatest piece of advice that you've ever received in your journey that you take action on every single day?
Well, I had met somebody when I was 20, and they were twice my age. We played a racquetball game, and I didn't do that well, but I was inspired by him because I was a better athlete. He just outsmarted me. And I started to hang out with him, and I actually went into the bathroom, and I was sitting on the toilet. And he had a nice picture frame that you could not, you want somebody to read something, hang it on the wall in front of the toilet. And it said 10 things I have learned. And the first quote was, I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And I knew what that meant. Anybody could read that. And I said to myself, I understand that, but I want to know what that means. I want to feel what that means to live that. right? And so it's the difference of reading something and being like, I get that, and the difference of like really knowing what it feels like to live that way, for me was two different things. So I spent probably the next 10 years of my life in the bookstore reading and downloading and doing everything I can to understand what that quote really meant.
I love it. And David, there's been a great conversation. I ask every guest this question because I really believe in your why and your how that drives you forward. So when you look back on your life so far and you think about those times when you really had to dig down deep and harness that inner tenacity to pull forward, to make something happen, to overcome personal, professional difficulties. And in the same breath, when you sit here with gratitude, appreciation, what you and the team have built and this legacy that you're creating, what keeps you centered? What keeps you focused? David Graziano, what is your North Star in life?
Actually, it's really simple. And it's probably been said in many different forms. I think, everybody's wanting to, I think, achieve the same thing, just different ways of naming it or calling it. But I realized for me, the fundamental in my darkest moments that really pulled me out of everything, that changed my life is my attitude, and that every decision I make in my life is connected to my attitude. And when I realized that, how every outcome of every situation is really dictated by my approach. And so when I approach things and I look at my attitude on how I am, these things really changed the outcome of many situations for the better. And I think if people just realize that, it's not, we're not just driving this vehicle through life without our hands on the steering wheel. We actually can put our hands on the steering wheel, and we can have a lot to do with the outcome of the things that we're approaching in life, a lot more than we think. And I think changing my attitude changed my life. I think that was a fundamental key thing. And there's another great speaker that I listened to. He summed it up really interesting. He said that the word responsibility, isn't just how well you take care of your chores. He's like, listen to the word, right? It's respondability. It's your ability to respond to things, right? So, and the better you are at responding to life's happenings, the more joy you're going to have in your life. And so those are the simple lessons that I practice every day, because I can't control everything that's happening to me on my outside world, but I can choose how to handle it. And that is my choice. And those things are the skill sets that I really worked on most of my adult life.
I love it. This is tremendous. And David, I want to thank you so much for joining me. Hang with me one moment here. Everybody, if you're interested and you are planning to, or maybe you're listening to this show and you're like, hey, I could get down to Miami on November 26th and 27th, down to Miami for Art With Me. You could check out more at miami.artwithme.org. Tickets are on sale now. I think this is going to be a pretty special weekend, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I believe so. My experience tells me yes. It's just one of those experiences that you have to be there to fully understand it. Yeah.
David, thank you so much for joining me. Where else could folks connect with you? Where could they learn more?
There's a lot going on the Instagram. Art with me life, and we're going to be pumping out. We have a lot of great content coming out before the event. So that's one way. All our social on Facebook, Twitter, our social media platforms really have some great content if anybody's interested in learning more about the event.
Awesome. Good stuff. I'm going to link everyone up in the show notes. Listen, everyone listening, thank you for spending time with David and I. We certainly appreciate and know how valuable your time is. Please check out Art With Me. You know where to find out more at thepodcast.com. Remember, take care of each other, look out for one another, and catch us next week for another great episode.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search The Podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.